Can everybody hear me okay? Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Stephen Salel, and I'm the curator of Japanese art here at the museum. I was asked to give a brief introduction before our guests come up on stage. But let me start off by simply saying that the Honolulu Museum of Art has a long tradition of it's famous for its Japanese woodblock prints, its ukiyo-e prints. And we have a tradition of presenting that artwork as being something that is culturally distinct from Western art. Even the way in which the galleries in the museum are spatially arranged. When you walk into the museum, if you turn to the left, you enter the Asian galleries. If you turn to the right, you enter the European and American galleries. It's an interesting coincidence that Mr. Takayanagi's his prints are on display on the right side of the museum alongside the Western works, because his work shows the way in which, since the early 20th century, and especially nowadays, many Japanese artists work in a very international style. So let me simply say that today we are not going to be talking very much about Japanese cultural concepts as distinct from Western concepts. Mr. Takayanagi's work has a very Western feel to it. And maybe at some point in the conversation, we can discuss why and how that kind of merger of cultures occurs. But let me simply say again, thank you all for coming, and let me ask our guests to come up onto stage and join me in the chairs, and we can begin our conversation. Mr. Takayanagi Yutaka. From the Honolulu Printmakers, the Executive Director, Denise Karabinus. And kindly providing translation is Ms. Moko Kamiya. Please have a seat. I'm going to try to play the role of an MC today. And let's see. We have a list of topics that we're going to try to cover today. But first of all, of course, we need some self-introductions from our guests. So I'd like to start off firstly with Mr. Takayanagi. Sir, could you please introduce yourself to us?
Oh. Aloha. Nice to meet you. I'm Yutaka, Takayanagi, Japanese print artist. This is my 4th time in Hawaii. I love Hawaii. When I was a child, I loved drawing, painting, and catching insects more than studying other subjects. I was born 1941 in Tokyo, Japan. I graduated from Tokyo University of Art oil painting course. When I finished master's course, I became interested in print art, especially photo print. I am making prints every day, ever since. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Takayanagi. His English is wonderful, isn't it? Let me also give Denise an opportunity to introduce herself. Denise?
Sure. Hi. My name is Denise Karabinus, and I'm the executive director of the Honolulu Printmakers. I'm a practicing artist here in Honolulu, primarily doing printmaking work. Intaglio is my speciality, but I also do relief printing and other types of printing as well. But right at the moment, I'm the director of the Printmakers, and a big part of my art practice is community building. And Honolulu Printmakers is an amazing community, and I'm incredibly proud to be running that organization, helping coordinate the various projects that we're doing. Did you want me to talk about the Printmakers now? Or in
Please, that would be great.
Okay. So the Honolulu Printmakers have been in Hawaii for 95 years. We believe that we're the oldest printmaking community print shop of its kind in the country, to our knowledge. And we have an incredible community. It's very unique, I think. Open community print studio. We offer classes, workshops. We bring visiting artists, and we do a lot of community outreach. So we participate in teaching in the schools, and we invite a lot of kind of activist type organizations into our studio to utilize our facility and kind of bring attention to various causes that are going on here in Hawaii. One of them was the Clean Water Shut Down Red Hill project, and we collaborated with the Sierra Club to help support that project. So things like that is a way that we can have a really big impact in the community.
Thank you. By the way, I wanted to mention that because we are basically doing a bilingual presentation here, and with Moko's assistance having everything translated, there will be times when there will be some delays as things are being translated, And I appreciate everybody's patience with that. Denise, could you tell us a little bit about how you got started working at the Honolulu Museum of Art?
Sure. So I think it was around 2008. I started volunteering at the Honolulu Printmakers. I just walked in and talked to the current director at that time, and I had been involved with a lot of print organizations up at Open Studio in Toronto and in Portland, Maine, and in New Jersey at the New Jersey Print Center. And so I had sort of a unique skill set of working in print shops, and I started volunteering, which is how I always find my community when I move to a new place. And they welcomed me with open arms, and so that became my family here, my second family, I should say. And so I've been involved for quite a long time, and then I started teaching at the museum school. Honolulu Printmakers were inside of the museum at that time and had been so for many, many years. And we had our print shop there, but we were our own organization. And then the Honolulu Museum of Art also offered classes. And so I taught for both programs. In the outreach program, through the printmaking department, and through Honolulu Printmakers, I was sometimes teaching assistant.
Thank you. I am basically trying to reconstruct the history of how all of us met. And I'm sort of going to segue into the year 2008 when Mr. Takayanagi, one of your artworks entered our museum's collection very early on, actually before 2008, sometime around 1970. Sorry, here we go. 1976, actually. And I heard that you were unaware that our museum purchased your artwork for a long time. And that you asked a friend to come to Honolulu and investigate about that. Could you tell us a little bit about that story?
日本語で。
日本語でどうぞお願いします。
遠い昔のことで今は、はっきり、記憶にはありません。だからちょっと間違えてるかもしれませんが、なるべく整理してお話ししたいと思います。
So, that happened long time ago. So his memory is not perfect, but he tried to recall as clear as possible.
ちょうど大学院を終えて数年経った頃、この作品を作りました。
So he created this print several years after completing his graduate school.
この、少し、面白い話は、まずこういう仕事をしてほとんど絵は売れたことがありません。
At that time, he couldn't really sell his prints.
ある時画廊を訪ねますと、委託してある作品でこの白桃足が売れましたよ 画廊の主人が言いました。
Okay, so one day, the master of the owner of the gallery in Tokyo told him that one of his prints, which is a bald eagle, has been sold.
私は驚きました。
And he was surprised.
どこで誰が 言い
And
まし
he asked, "Oh,
た。ど
who?
この誰が
Yeah.
どこの誰が
Who from where purchased it?" He asked.
ホノルル美術館が買いました。
So the owner told him that the Honolulu Museum of Art purchased it.
びっくりしましたね。
He was shocked.
そんなことは夢にも思ったことがありません。
Yeah, he had never thought about that his print will be purchased by a museum.
さっきも申しましたように、絵は売れないもの、売れなくても売れないからいい作品なんだというちょっと負け惜しみですが。
Okay, so he had perception that if his print is not sold, which means his print is too good.
でも内心は嬉しかったんですね。このイーグルがホノルルに行ったんだと思いました。それはイーグルが今は止まってますね。止まってるけど、羽を広げて飛び立ったと思いました、ね。
So he thought that he was very pleased to hear that, and also he thought that his bald eagle flew to Hawaii.
そしてただ数年経ってこの本当にそうなのかという疑問が出てきました。
Okay, so several years after, he began to wonder, the museum really purchased it? Because there was no document.
そして数年もっと時代が経って
Later on,
私は他のいろいろな美術館に作品が入るようになりました。
okay, so the other museums in Japan began to purchase his prints.
しかし
However,
ながら、ずっと気になっていて本当にあるのか何の証明もないんです。
yeah, so once again, he had been still wondering if his bald eagle is owned by Honolulu Museum of Art. He needed verification.
疑い深いんです。
Yeah, he was suspicious.
で、ある、古い友人がホノルルに、この美術館にちょっと関係があって、僕の作品を本当にあるか確かめてほしいと言いました。
Okay, so he had a friend who had been researching at UH Manoa, and he asked her to visit Honolulu Museum of Art to verify the purchase.
それでも疑い深い私は、
He was still suspicious.
自分の目で見たいと思っていました。
Yeah, he really wanted to see his bald eagle with his own eyes.
で、私の姪の結婚式でハワイにホノルルに来るチャンスがあった。
So he was able to come to Hawaii to attend his niece's wedding.
そして私はここに押しかけました。
Yeah, so he finally came here.
そして親切なキュレーターが引き出しを開けて見せてくれました。
So the very kind curator of Honolulu Museum of Art showed his bald eagle.
日本からわざわざ飛んできてありがとう気持ちでした。
So he wanted to say to his bald eagle, "Thank you for flying all the way from Japan to Hawaii."
で、ただとても元気な白頭ワシを見て、一人じゃ寂しいかなと言いました。
So he saw his very healthy bald eagle, and then he thought that, oh, he looks lonely and he needs company.
キュレーターに失礼ながら寂しがっているので少し増やせないかと言いました。
Okay, so he told the curator that the bald eagle looks lonely, so can I bring more friends?
最初びっくりしていたキュレーターもとうなずいてくれました。
Okay, so the curator looked surprised, but she nodded and she agreed.
そしてまたチャンスが訪れました。
Okay, so he was able to come to Hawaii again
数年経って。
several years later.
そしてそこで私はそのチャンス OK をいただいたからもう勢いがついてますから、たくさん持ち込んだんですね。
Yeah, so since he got approved, so he brought tons of prints.
そしてその時お目にかかったのがサレルさんとスティーブンさんとそれからもう一人のキュレーター2人に会いました。
Okay, so that's when he met Stephen Salel and also
my supervisor, Sean Eichmann,
okay.
at the time. The curator who Mr. Takayanagi met originally was my predecessor, Sawako. And so my introduction to Mr. Takayanagi was, I believe that he called me on the telephone. I was sitting in my office, the phone rang, I picked it up, and this charming gentleman started speaking to me in Japanese about how he was on his way to the museum and that he had an arrangement with the previous curator and that he hoped that I would honor that arrangement. And I was very new to the museum here, so I was still kind of learning the ropes, and this sort of opportunity to see new prints and possibly acquire the prints seemed like a delightful opportunity. Anyways, we welcomed Mr. Takayanagi to the museum. We looked at his works. I'm afraid that we weren't able to accept all of the wonderful pieces that he brought because we had space limitations. But we, Sean Eichmann and I, we tried to make as wise a selection as possible, showing 3 different stages in Mr. Takayanagi's career. And I hope that Mr. Takayanagi feels like we made a good choice.
Yeah, the museum did.
Anyways, we flash forward about 2 years, and I finally have an opportunity to exhibit Mr. Takayanagi's work. By the way, let me say one more thing about this print here, the Blue Eagle. It was purchased, I believe, by a curator named Howard Link, who was active here in the 1970s. And I just wanted to point that out because if I told you that, for example, I myself had purchased it, that wouldn't mean very much because, it's just Stephen. Howard Link, by contrast, was responsible for the acquisition of the print collection of James Michener, which made the Honolulu Museum of Art the third largest collection of Japanese prints in the United States. So in the history of the museum, Howard Link has a very distinguished position. And the fact that this curator also purchased the work of Mr. Takayanagi speaks volumes, in my opinion, about the importance of Mr. Takayanagi's work. Anyways, as I said, we flash forward to 2014, and we finally put together a presentation of Mr. Takayanagi's prints in the Robert F. Lange Gallery, which is where we show our ukiyo-e prints. Right now we have some works by Sharaku on display there. And to my great delight, Mr. Takayanagi flies from Tokyo to Honolulu to do some activities related to the exhibition. And one of those activities was over at the art school. He proposed doing a workshop with the art school students that he called heel print. And I believe at that time he met Denise, because Denise was she was selected as Mr. Takayanagi's technical assistant. Mr. Takayanagi, could you briefly tell us a bit about what that workshop was about?
Hi. この時は2つのワークショップがありました。で、チルドレンの部と、それからアダルトの部と、2つのワークショップをやりました。
Okay, so 9 years ago, there were 2 workshops, one for children, one for adults.
で、チルドレンの部は半日でしたけどね、半日。それからアダルトの部が2日に分けてやりました。
Okay, so the children one was half day, but the adult one was for 2 days.
で、今日いらして くれている方の中にもその当時一緒にやった仲間が何人かいらっしゃいますね。ありがとうございます。
So he says thank you to those who attended the workshop. He can see the faces who attended.
Possibly
the
some
workshop.
people here in the audience were there 9 years ago at the workshop. Thank you. Thank you so much.
とても懐かしい思い出ですけど、子どもの部はオイルを使わないでウォーターカラーに、グリューなんていうかでんぷんの糊をちょっと混ぜて使ってやりましたね。そういう方法を取りました。
So at the children workshop, he didn't use any oil, just used watercolor and also a little bit glue.
でもう足で踏んづけるから子どもたちはもう喜んでみんなステップオンでやりました。
So his method of printing is to have children use their feet, especially
簡単に言い
heels.
ますいいですか、簡単に言いますと人間のヒールはもうちょっと魔法のように素晴らしいプリントのなんていう機械に勝る、すごい威力を発揮するものなんですね。
And so our heels can be used to print the many designs.
この方法は私が考案したものですけど、それは機械がマシンを使わないからいつでもどこでもスペースがほんの少しのスペースで、できるので、日本でもいろいろなところから小学校とか幼稚園からでもそれからお年寄りの方たちでもみんな楽しくやれてまるで魔法のようなそういう美しいものが簡単にできるということで結構需要があります。
Since his printing technique doesn't require any printing machine, they only need a small space and only heels. So many schools and organizations in Japan began to use Takayanagi's heel method to create wonderful prints.
しかしながら毎日これやってるわけではありません。
But he said that he does not only do this heel print, but also
毎日これやってるとちょっとおかしい人みたいですね。
yeah, he said that he would look strange if he keeps doing the stepping thing all day.
それでその時僕を手伝ってくれたインストラクターがデニースさんです。
Yeah, so Denise was the one who helped him at the
エ
workshops.
ピソードを話してもよろしいでしょうか。
I was interested in either of you talking a little bit about your collaboration together. Yeah, you, Mr. Takayanagi, there was some sort of an episode that happened between you and Denise?
お話をさせたそのデニスさんとのやりとりで何かエピソードがあった
はい、そうなんです。私は一生懸命今度は大人の部の話ですね、アダルトの部、一生懸命、吸って見せてあげてました。それは機械を使うんですね。機械を使ってフェルトで色のついた版の上にフェルトをかけるわけです。だけどフェルトの間に紙がなければなりません。紙がないとプリントはできないわけですね。私はうっかりしてプロであるのにもかかわらずうっかりしてその紙を入れるのを忘れました。そうしたらもうきれいな フェルトに絵がすっかり映ってしまいました。擦れてしまいました。
Okay.
その時彼女は叫んだんですね。ファイヤーやられました。おー
Okay.
made a mistake.
Okay, so what happened is during the adult workshop, he used a printing machine, and then he was supposed to place a piece of paper between the machine and also the colored plate and the felt, but he was too focusing on his printing, and he forgot to place a piece of paper between the felt and the inked plate. And then, so he ended up printing his image to felt. And Denise found out, and she said to him, "Oh, you made such a terrible mistake. You are fired."
Okay, Denise, this is your opportunity to defend yourself. So, go.
Of course, I was kidding, but that is a big no-no in the print shop.
しかしながらその隣にいた若者が青年がちょっと待って、先生のこのフェルトに映ったプリントは今に価値が上がってきっととてもこれは有名になりますと言いました。
Okay, so there was a young man by them, and then he said that, "Oh, you printed your image onto the felt, so this felt is gonna be valuable, so we could sell it."
しかし、私はバンクシーではありません。
Laura was telling us, Laura's the former director, she's here today, and she was saying that the felt is still in the print shop.
Anyways, I'm delighted to hear that not only did the workshop go really well, but the two of you struck up a great friendship that has lasted all of these years ever since. And these are some of the works that the students produced during that workshop, and some photos of Denise and Mr. and Mrs. Takayanagi.
This was our sushi dinner afterwards from Yanagi.
I remember.
And now we flash forward to 2023, and we have on display many of the same works. It might not be the exact same works, but from the gift that Mr. Takayanagi gave to us back in 2012. The great prints that we call the exquisite corpses of Takayanagi Yutaka. The title of the show might surprise some people. It's a reference to ideas in Dadaism and Surrealism, very famous art movements in Europe shortly after the First World War. And when I talk about Mr. Takayanagi's work, I don't think that I give enough attention to some of these ideas that he has incorporated into his work. And so for much of our remaining time here, I wanted to talk to not only Mr. Takayanagi, but also with Denise about these ideas. Basically, there are three main philosophies that you find in Mr. Takayanagi's work. Sorry, these are some other images from this past week. Again, he did a workshop at the art school in which the art teachers and also the members of the general public were able to make their own prints using their heels and using leaves from the garden outside the art school. And just yesterday, at Denise's invitation, we visited the Honolulu Printmakers, where Mr. Takayanagi conducted a kind of portfolio review. How did that go, Denise?
I thought it was great. We had, I think, 6 members of the Honolulu Printmakers, our professional members, brought a few prints each, and then we each had an opportunity to go around the room and talk about the prints and focus on the individual artist's work, which was really nice, and something I just think we don't do often enough is look at each other's work and talk about it in that slightly more formal way. And I think it was a big hit with the members. Definitely something to do again moving forward.
Well, let me, as I just mentioned a second ago, let me shift gears here and talk a little bit about the 3 major artistic influences on Mr. Takayanagi's work. And the first is the work of Stanley William Hayter. And I have a video here. It's a style of printing that is a bit complicated, and I wanted to use a video in which the artist himself explains the way in which you make these color prints using only a single pass through the press. Let's see. Hopefully, this will make sense. And if you have any questions afterwards, fortunately, we have an expert, actually 2 experts here, but a local expert on the technique as well, and she can add some further information.
Traditionally, if you required a print in full color, the printmaker made several plates, inked them in different colors, and printed them one after the other in register on a single sheet of paper. Finding this method rather cumbersome and inflexible, Hayter devised an alternative and more direct method of color printing from a single plate and using only one pass under the press.
In our method, the plate is first inked in the normal way with an intaglio color, which is worked into the grooves in the plate. Excess ink is then wiped off the surface, so that color is only held in the bottom of the grooves in the plate. If a trial proof were struck at this stage, the result would be a print showing the overall outlines and densities of the plate. The next 2 colors are applied with rollers, one of which is hard and quite large in diameter, so that it penetrates very little into the hollows of the plate, and deposits color only in the unetched areas. The large roller is re-inked and passed over the plate in the opposite direction. The intaglio color is completely transformed by the passage of the green roller. The other roller is softer and charged with a more sticky ink. It penetrates more deeply into the hollows, which the hard roller skimmed over. But the stickier yellow ink is rejected by the ink already laid down, so that this color takes only in the spaces missed by the hard roller. The plate is now fully inked and is taken to the press. In this way of working, it's possible with very few basic pigments to produce a full range of visible color. In fact, for all of my prints, I only use 8 different pigments, and they are very seldom mixed together before being applied. And in one particular print, it's very unlikely that I should use more than 3. The interference between these 3 will give me all of the color that's necessary, both through the transparency on the plate and the different ways in which the color, the intaglio color, is held inside the plate.
All right. As I said, it's a slightly complicated technique of printing. I know that Mr. Takayanagi has some things that he would like to say about his relationship with Hater. Before that, though, I was wondering, Denise, could you tell me, I believe you have some experience with this sort of simultaneous color printing. Could you tell us about that?
Sure. We call this viscosity printing nowadays. Usually that's the term that's used today. And I teach this technique when I do intaglio classes, and it's very satisfying because you can get multiple colors off the plate in one go through the press. And I always say it's a lot for your effort, to get like 3 colors all at one time through the printing press. And so I did study that in my undergraduate, and I like to teach it now as instructor. And it was really neat to see his technique, which was slightly different than what I had learned. And so I got to pick up a lot of new information. And one of the things that he introduced to me was this idea of the shaped plate. And we were banging the plates with hammers, because in the viscosity technique, where you're separating you're separating ink into 3 different levels of oil. One is really loose, and one is very stiff, and usually there's some transparency as well. And it's super experimental, and you often don't know what you're going to get once you kind of roll them all together. But the shaped plate introduces a whole nother dimension to this. And it's important for the plate to have kind of levels in it. In etching, we actually etch the levels down. But in his technique, he was teaching us to hit them with hammers. And so I went down to the metalsmithing department at the school, and we were pounding these aluminum plates with hammers to get that dimensional quality. And you can sort of see some of the dimensional quality in this image, where some of the parts of the plate were higher and some of the parts of the plate are lower, and that's how you're allowed to receive the ink with that softer roller.
Mr. Takayanagi, I believe that after you finished your graduate school study, you moved to France and you studied printmaking for 1 year with Stanley William Hayter. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience?
そう言われると申し訳なく思いますが、実際にサイマルテイナスの方法は教えてもらってないんです。それでちょっとバレてしまいました。
In fact, he did not learn the technique of viscosity printing directly from Hayter.
といういいですか？というのはもうすでにヘイターのところに訪れる前に私は日本で深澤幸雄さんという人の、技法書がありまして、それでヘイターを研究して、そしてもう完璧にもう技法は習得して、それからヘイターのところに行きました。
So before he flew to France to meet Hayter, he learned the viscosity technique invented by Hayter by the book written by the Japanese master printmaker Fukazawa Yukio. He read repeatedly and he became the master of Hayter's technique before he met Hayter.
そしてその後作ったエンボッシングのシルクスクリーンと組み合わせた作品を持ってヘイターのその版画集ですね、版画集を持って、それは10点セットなんですけど、まあイメージはこのもっと白っぽい感じですけどね、それを持ってヘイターのところに初めてヘイターのアトリエで会いました。そう、もう自分で持って行きました。そこにはもういいですか、もうちょっと長く。そこには、7人くらいのアメリカから来た若い女性がヘイターのところで研修してました。そこからヘイターは向こうからやってきました。さっきの顔そのものです。そしてただ違うのが髪の毛が僕と同じように真っ白でした。
Okay, so when he flew to France to meet Hayter, he brought tens of his prints made by the technique of embossing. I think many of you already saw his embossed prints. And when he arrived at Hayter's studio, there were 7 American female students, and Hayter was coming in, and then with exactly the same face, but the only difference is his hair was like his hair, very white.
それでヘイターはその時握手をして挨拶をしてからいきなり大きな紙を2枚自分の前に並べて、そして鉛筆を持たされました。いきなりですよ。そこでお前なんか円を描いてみろと言いました。
Okay, so Hater suddenly placed two pieces of paper on the table and gave Mr. Takayanagi a pencil and told him to draw a circle on the paper.
私はびっくりして何を言い出すのだろうと思ったけど、それを受け取りました。でも言われる、偉大なヘーターがここにいるわけですから、こっちは緊張しますよね。そして私は円をちょっと緊張気味にこう描きました、サークル。
Yes, he was surprised, but he couldn't say no because the hater told him to draw a circle. So he drew a circle very nervously.
ヘーターは今度はその鉛筆を取り上げて自分の紙に目を軽くつぶりながらシューッと流れるように描きました。
Okay, so then the hater took the pencil from Mr. Takayanagi, and the hater drew a beautiful circle with his eyes closed, very elegantly.
それにはもうあまりの美しさに私はびっくりしました。
Mr. Takayanagi was fascinated by the beauty of the hater's circle.
でもちょっと意地悪ですね。
Yeah, so he thought that was not nice.
ヘーターの一般多所釣りは私のはちょっとそんな、結果に終わりましたけど、今度私の作品をそこで並べました。そして彼が何て言ったかというと、こういう絵もあるんだと言いました。
Okay, so Mr. Takayanagi showed his embossed prints to Hater. And then Hater said, "Oh, they look very new."
こういう絵もある。
Yeah. He thought the hater said he has never seen the prints like those.
It's not exactly a straightforward compliment, was it? Yeah.
そう。
Yeah. Anyways, that technique of viscosity printing seems to be the formal aspect of your artwork nowadays. And in addition to that, I believe that when you returned to Japan and started producing works, you stumbled upon a technique that was actually quite closely connected with Dadaism, the work of Marcel Duchamp, and the idea of ready-mades. This is a print by Mr. Takayanagi that is from a series called My Favorite Artists. And the title of the print is Marcel Duchamp. The image in the upper right is a portrait of the artist that I believe originated from this photograph on the left. And the other image in the print is from this kinetic sculpture that this image I'm showing here on the left is in the collection of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. But more than this kinetic sculpture, of course, Marcel Duchamp is famous for a work known as Fountain, which is basically a urinal that the artist didn't produce by hand, but simply purchased from a shop and displayed in a gallery with the explanation that it's made out of porcelain, so it is no less a work of ceramic sculpture than anything that a potter might have made. But at the time, this idea of a ready-made, a prefabricated object that an artist simply selects and puts on display and designates as a work of art was a very radical concept. The reason why I mention this is because if you look at the early works of Mr. Takayanagi that he produced around the time that he met Hayter, he was doing something very similar. He went to the Japan Times, a newspaper publisher in Tokyo, and at that time, the newspaper companies used zinc letterpress plates. And after printing the day's newspaper with those plates, they would discard them. And one of the students in Mr. Takayanagi's class that he was teaching at the time had a relative working at the Japan Times, and this student welcomed Mr. Takayanagi to go to the Japan Times and to select some of these discarded plates. So Mr. Takayanagi was able to use these to make his own artwork. I believe there was some condition to the agreement, however. Mr. Takayanagi, could you explain about that agreement?
新しい版画を作ろうと思ってた時に、何か、写真の学校の、講師を頼まれて、その講師を生徒を教えてました。その時に生徒の一人が私の版画を見て、先生こんなものは私のおじさんのところに行けばいっぱいあるよと教えてくれます。おじさんどこにいるのってジャパンタイムズの地下にいると、そういうふうに言ってくれました。
While he was thinking about creating something new, he was teaching photography, and then one of his students introduced his uncle who worked at the Japan Times, Japanese English newspaper company, and his students invited Mr. Takayanagi to meet his uncle who worked at the basement of the Japan Times building.
写真の学校で写真を教えてたんではなくて、デッサンを教えてました。
Oh, okay. So he taught actually drawing at the school, not the photography. Sorry.
そして私は、おじさんのところに急いである日行きました。
So he rushed to meet the uncle.
その時愕然とするくらいびっくりしました。そこの地下にはまるで黒い金属の塊が山のように積んであって、 そしてちょうど折よく夕日がそれに当たってまして、黒い塊の中でその白く金属の部分がキラキラとまるで昆虫の死骸のような感じで輝いてまして、ね。
Okay, so when he went to the basement of the Japan Times building, he saw a pile of discarded black zinc plates, and he was taken aback because the pile of discarded zinc plates was shining under the sunset, and that looked to him like a pile of corpses of insects.
それはよく見るとそれは昆虫でも何でもないんですが、その日に使われた新聞の広告の部分がその中には、もちろんその日の広告ですから、女性の顔や動物や植物、もちろんいろいろな、それからゴルフの練習している風景、それからホテルのホテルの先代、そういうものまでがもうごちゃごちゃになってそこの目の前に現れたわけです。
So he saw many images in the pile of discarded zinc plate, such as a face of women or a building or plants, and yeah, he saw many images.
広告もね、
Yeah,
ホテルの広告、
including ads of the hotel.
それからゴルフの練習の、コラム。
Okay, so the photograph of the ads of the golf playing.
まあ要するにその時代のその日の日常のことがすべてそこに見られた。
Okay, so he was able to see the daily ads from the pile of the discarded zinc plates.
で、私はそれを見て感動して、これは使えると思ったんですね。
So he was fascinated by the discarded zinc plates, and he saw that he can use them for his prints.
これをくださいと私は言いました。
Yeah, he asked the Japan Times, give them to me for free.
その人はってちょっと考えたけどダメって言いました。
Okay, so the Japan Times official thought a little, and he said no.
っていうのはもうあれですね、こういう写真や何かはみんなフォトグラファーが撮ってるわけですから、版権というものがあるんだよ。
Yeah, because all of the images of the ads are copyrighted.
私は負けませんでした。だけど、いやそれはそうだけど、もうバラバラにして組み替えればコラージュという方法があるじゃないですか。それがアッサンブラージュという方法もあるじゃないですか。ピカソだってみんなそういう方法で絵を作っているんです。違う世界を作り上げればこれは OK じゃないかと力説しました。
Okay, so he was persistent, and he explained to the Japan Time official that what if he cut the zinc plates into pieces and mix them up and create a collage or assemblage just like Picasso did. So it will be totally fine. He persuaded.
ついに彼は負けました。
Yeah. So he won.
そして私はその日約束して、それじゃあ持ってっていいと言われて、大きなボストンバッグを持ってその中にそれをたくさん詰め込みました。とても一人では動かせないぐらい詰め込んで、それをずるずる引きずりながらタクシーを呼んで 割合近くに住んでいたものですから、家までタクシーで買いました。
So he got all of the zinc plates and he put them in a big bag, but it was so heavy he had to drag it, and he lived quite close to the Japan Times, but he had to call the taxi to bring them in.
そして家帰ってもう嬉しくてしょうがなくて、それをインクをガソリンで洗って、それで全部インクをきれいにして、真っ黒に汚れたインクをきれいにして、そしてそれはもう本当に宝石のようにみんな輝いていました。
Okay, he was so excited when he went back home, and the first thing he had to do was to clean the discarded zinc plate with gasoline. Yeah. After cleaning them up, all of the zinc plates became so shiny.
ちょうど厚さが1ミリ弱ですね。1ミリよりちょっと薄いくらい。
So it was so thin, like a paper.
それを鉄のこで持ってゴシゴシ切りました。
So he used a jigsaw to cut them into pieces.
そしてそれに色をつけて、コラージュ風に並べて、そして絵をちょっと刷ってみました。
Yeah, so he applied colors and then printed.
それはまるで自分は予測もつかないような新しい、読める版画というものがそこに自分で現れてきましたね。
So as he used the discarded zinc plates, there are many words, English words. So the outcome was like a readable print.
これは新しい方法だ。私はわからない英語をところどころ辞書を引いて並べ替えたりして、まるでポエティックな気持ちになりましたね。
Yeah, so he liked a new method and also the style of randomness. So he used his dictionary and he enjoyed creating his print, just like creating unpredictable poem.
もし私も油絵を描いていたからよくわかるんですけど、油絵がノベルだとすると、もう一方のこの今やってるような版画の方はポエムだろうと。ノベルとポエムが両方が自分の中に交錯して、これはこれからやるのはポエム風のこっちの方だなと、その時感動自分で決めました。
Okay, so he used to major in oil painting, and to him, oil painting was like a novel, which takes a long time to express one thought. But on the other hand, this style print is like poetry, which he chooses a certain image very carefully. So he thought that his style was shifting to poetry.
そして初めて個展を開いた時、びっくりするぐらいニュースになりました。
So when he had the very first exhibition of his new style print, it became very popular.
Thank you very much, Japan Times と言いました。
Yeah. So he said to himself, "Thank you very much, Japan Times."
Thank you. Thank you for the great story. I think that actually, if we were to look at Denise's work, Denise, I believe you have a similar kind of experience about working with either prefabricated or discarded materials that you basically revived and made into artwork. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
of that I call tier mandalas was all made on reused newsprint. So interestingly, it connects to the Japan Times. But newsprint had too many darks and lights. It was like too dramatic because the text, like some texts are really bold and some were really subtle. So I ended up actually using these really boring financial guides because I wanted this really nice harmonized color palette. But I wanted to use newspaper because I wanted to make these works very large. They're collaged, interestingly, they also connecting to your work. So I relief print them on woodblock, and then I cut them out, and then I recollage them together. And I make these harmonized color palettes out of the layers of newspaper. So here you can really see the text underneath the printed image. So yeah, I do find it really interesting to have kind of found material incorporated into the artwork. And in my case, it was sort of a matter of wanting to work very large and wanting it to be inexpensive at the time. And but then it kind of has this backstory, you know, that it's kind of incorporated in. And the tier mandala was made from that repetitive tier form when I lost my first son. And then I call this previous one was called Ocean Sway, which is when I had my second son. And so you can see that the tier mandala, which started out as a whirlpool, turned into kind of like anemone and blossoms and like a dahlia flower. So it was an interesting transformation of the material.
Thank you. And you were living in India at the time that you were making these? Is that right?
No, I wasn't living in India, but I had done a project, an international artist residency and community service. And at that time, we went to a fairly small village and did a printmaking project. And so they asked us not to really bring new materials to the village because they said the children aren't going to have access to a printing press or special fancy materials. So they said just work with whatever they have in the village. And so I had a little stack of printmaking paper that I brought, but we went through that in a few minutes because it seemed like hundreds of children. It really probably was 60 or 70, but it felt like a tremendous amount of children to teach a printmaking workshop. And so I said, well, where can we get more paper? And they said, just ask the kids, they'll go get you paper. And they came back with newspaper. And so I ended up printing on newspaper and really falling in love with this idea of just using what you had readily available and not sort of being too fussy or overthinking it. And I also just wanted the kids to be able to relate to the materials that we were using and for those materials to be things that they could have in their everyday life.
And you didn't have access to a printing press, is that right?
That's right. So we were just printing them with our hands. I was rolling them up with a really basic ink, and then I actually colored the papers with turmeric. So I mixed glue and turmeric to make that beautiful yellow color and used red printing ink, which were both things I knew that they readily had available in that area, and wanted to just show them something that they could make that was very different and outside of their normal maybe experience, but with materials that they had available to them.
So in terms of the printing technique, it was not all that different from the kind of heel print technique that Mr. Takayanagi was teaching to the students at the Honolulu Museum of Art School, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I was very influenced by his workshop where he taught the kids to print with their heels because I realized like, oh, that's something we can do without a printing press and with very little materials. And so we were printing them mostly by hand, just by pressing with our hand on the back of the paper, and got fantastic results. And we didn't really need a printing press. And so I just feel like more and more in my life as a printer, I go back to sort of the simplicity of things. And I was definitely impacted by the workshop that I did with him and carried that on into my work. You can see, again, also the shaped plate. So typically printmaking, there's a very impressed rectangular plate mark. But I really have always been interested in freeing my prints from the rectangle. And so this is a dimensional print with a curved edge. And you can see this is actually a sculptural type of print. So again, it's neat to see how like one person maybe seems like a small impact actually has this ripple that ends up in your work forever.
Thank you.
ちょっとオイルの話をしたいんですけど、ちょこっといいですか？デニスさんがインストラクターとして一生懸命やってくださって、日本ではこれ何かインクを洗い落とすのがガソリンを使ってたんですね。ガソリン系のものを使ってて体にあんまり良くなかったんです。それでちょうどそれをやってる時にデニスさんがハワイでは、これよって言って持ってきてくれたのが、サラダオイルです。サラダオイルで、サラダオイルでインクがきれいに落ちるんですよ。もうサラダオイルですから体には絶対いいですね。だからそれでインクを落とすのにガソリンなんか使わなくてもこのサラダオイルっていうのがこれは素晴らしいと思って、もうそのサラダオイル使ってから私は病気をしないで今日まで生きていられるんです。
Okay, so he wanted to add one thing. 9 years ago, when he had workshop here, he learned one new thing from Denise. In Japan, using gasoline to clean ink is a standard. Okay, the gasoline is very toxic, but when he worked with Denise, he asked her, "I want to clean the ink," and she brought a bottle of salad oil. And he was shocked to know that he could use salad oil to clean inks. And salad oil is not toxic at all. So since then, he began to use salad oil in Japan as well, and he feel grateful for her to make him healthier.
Thank you. Yeah. We are getting really close to the end of our allotted time here. So there are some topics that I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to skip over them. And I want to just briefly give, here some images of Mr. Takayanagi in his studio in Japan, by the way. And I wanted to give Denise an opportunity to talk about some upcoming events at the Honolulu Printmakers. And then I wanted to give all of you an opportunity to ask some questions to Denise and Mr. Takayanagi, if that's okay. So anyways, Denise, there are some events coming up soon?
Yeah, the Honolulu Printmakers are really busy these days. We have a new studio right on the edge of Chinatown and downtown at 1142 Bethel Street. And our new space has really allowed us to do all kinds of new activities and revive some of the ones that we traditionally do. So we're going to have our holiday print sale December 1st and 2nd. And then we're collaborating with the Downtown Art Center and having our studio open for the open house and a gift print sale for the 8th and 9th and 15th and 16th. So please come in and see what we're up to. If you haven't been into the new studio, it's amazing. We have a beautiful space, beautiful large open work tables, and there's so much going on. We're inviting the students from Kamehameha schools to present their printmaking work. And so we'll have an exhibition of the high school students' prints on display as well, so that's exciting. But we have ongoing exhibitions. Right now we have our monitors exhibition up, as well as a beautiful portfolio that the museum gave back to us because it was a duplicate of 1977 printmakers, which really relates well to the show that's up right now. And yeah, we're just a really open community. We would like to invite everybody. You don't have to be a printer to be a supporter of the Honolulu Printmakers. So we welcome all members from the community, and we would love for you to join us.
And I believe that one of my fellow curators, Alejandra Silva, is working on an exhibition of prints from the Honolulu Printmakers.
Yeah, so Alejandra is going to be our curator this year for our annual exhibition. So this will be our 96th annual exhibition of all the printmaking work in Hawaii for this year. So we support the artists on all of the islands, not just here in Honolulu, but the print artists that work on other islands also participate in this exhibition, which will be opening on the first Friday in March.
Wonderful. So lots of great things to look forward to. Thank you so much. I wanted to give you all an opportunity to ask questions. We have a few minutes left, so if anybody has any questions, please don't be shy.
私の日本個人的なギャラリーはありません。ギャラリーっていうかスタジオは持ってるけどギャラリーはない。
Yeah, he has his studio, but he does not have his gallery. スタジオをお伺いしてよろしいでしょうか。
いや、もちろんです。
Sure, you can.
ぜひいらしてください。
Please visit.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you so much. It is about 3:30, so we're finishing right on the money. If you're interested, the exhibition continues until December 3rd. And if you haven't seen it yet, it is in Gallery 3. If you go out of the theater and you walk towards the main exit or the main entrance of the museum, you'll find it on your left. I hope you enjoy the show. I have one last slide here with some words of thanks to all of the people who made not only the exhibition, but in particular this past week with Mr. Takayanagi, all of the activities that he did, including the workshops at the art school, the visit to the Honolulu Printmakers, and of course, this afternoon's talk with all of you possible. So thanks to them, and most importantly, thanks to all of you for coming here and supporting all that we do here. If we could give Mr. Takayanagi a round of applause, and also Denise Karabinus.